On air.
All right. I call the 2,332nd meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. This meeting is being conducted by video conference. The public has been invited to watch the meeting on the city's YouTube channel, Comcast Cable Channel 30 in city limits, or by logging into the Zoom video conference as an attendee. The public may submit comments in writing by email to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. There will be opportunities for the public to give oral testimony during today's meeting. When it's time to take public comment, staff will monitor the email inbox, the Zoom participant list, and the Zoom chat to see if anyone would like to speak. We will take comments in the order that they are received and seen. Spanish translations are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. Contamos con un servicio de traducción al español cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad para reuniones por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Translation services are also available in other languages. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. If members of the public become disruptive, we will mute and remove them from the video conference. If that fails to stop this disruptions, we will recess the meeting and return within 5 minutes. If we are unable to continue, council will briefly meet off air to move unfinished business to the next council agenda. Alrighty. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The City of Milwaukee respectfully acknolledges that our community is located on the ancestral homelands of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya Etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. Help support our Meals on Wheels during the March for Meals campaign. You can donate online or at a sponsor location. Bob's Red Mill will match donations up to $10,000 through the end of April. Visit ncprd.com to learn more. To see if you or someone you know may qualify for Meals on Wheels, call the nutrition program at 503-654-3030. Visit the Letting Library for Spring Break Scavenger Hunt from March 20th to March 28th. Look for 10 hidden pictures in the windows of the library during the week. Clues will be available outside the front door during curbside hours, which are Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Milwaukee celebrates Earth Day on Saturday, April 24th. The virtual event will feature presentations, interactions, discussions, and a variety of calls to action. More information will be posted on the city's website as we get closer to the event. To register, send an email to rsvp@milwaukeeoregon.gov or call 503-786-7519. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage, where you will find the city calendar at milwaukeeoregon.gov. If you don't have access to the internet, please call the city's general number at 503-786-7555, and staff will provide you with the information you need or connect you with someone who can help. All right. Our next item is the Milwaukee High School Outstanding Student Award. This will be presented by the Milwaukee High School Principal, Carmen Gelman.
Good evening, everybody.
Award. Good evening, Carmen. This will be presented
Thank you for having us tonight. I'm super excited to present Charity Miller. I sent you some information about her. She's amazing, awesome. Charity just really grateful to have you and that you could join us tonight, and we get to celebrate you and all of your accomplishments. So I do, every time I nominate a student, I ask teachers to give me any feedback or anything like that. And so several teachers talked about you and sent me information, and I'd like to read some of that tonight. Ms. Altman says that Charity is amazing. She is a stellar student who does her best on everything. She is a strong and quiet leader who guides discussions and projects focusing on quality results. Other students respect her hard work, and her thoughtful insights. I really enjoyed teaching her, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she accomplishes next. And I'm not going to read all of them because I have quite a few, but I'll read a few of them. I worked with Charity last year and was really impressed with her work ethic. Charity works incredibly hard at getting her work done with quality. She took on every learning opportunity in my class to develop her skills and knowledge. I was also impressed with her contribution to the documentary that the Black Student Union created for Black History Month. Charity's art and speech were powerful. All of Milwaukie should be proud of her dedication and commitment. Mr. Shank. Charity is an amazing talent and very creative. I had her in art as well as photography and art tech, and she loves art. She is also super kind, polite, and has a great sense of humor. What a wonderful recognition, and very well deserved. Mr. Fell. And finally, I met Charity this year when she joined Milwaukee's Black Student Union. Charity joined the group and instantly brought a strong will and welcoming heart with her. She is a smart, thoughtful, reflective, and courageous individual. It didn't take too much time for Charity to become one of our BSU hype person, always affirming the experiences of her peers within the group. I admire that most in her. She doesn't have to know you to know that you deserve to be treated with kindness. Charity was a huge contributor to our BSU Black History Month documentary and shared her love for her identity and culture courageously on film. Yes, you did. Sorry, I shouldn't have intervened with my own comment in there. She continues to advocate for the representation and celebration of Black culture in our school community, and that honestly has empowered me to advocate for the same with a similar passion. I appreciate Charity for all that she has taught me and her peers in just a little time that I have known her. I am excited to see where else her influence will land and hope it's received with the gratitude it deserves. I know this is to be just the start of the land and hope it is received with the gratitude it deserves. I know this to be the start of the many ways Charity will be recognized for her contributions in the future. Good job, Charity. Ms. Nelson. So Charity had a huge role, not just is she an amazing student, kind, caring, a leader, and lots of teachers had a lot of really good things to say about her. And but she did have a huge role in the documentary, and it's almost like she's leaving her legacy with us. She academically is at the top of her class. She's number one in her class, actually, and has done very well. And she's an amazing artist. And she said I could share her painting with everybody. So Scott, could you please present that? This is a piece of Charity's artwork that I just absolutely love and wanted to share with folks. And I really appreciate that she allowed me to do that. And Charity, I just want to say, as your principal, thank you so much for being such an amazing young woman and student, and just for all your contributions to Milwaukie. Thank you so much.
Right. Charity, we would love to hear a little bit from you, your thoughts about what's next for you, what you're thinking about, what you'd like to get into.
Well, first I'd like to thank Mrs. Gelman for nominating me for this award. It is such an honor.
Thank you, Charity. Well deserved.
So do you have any thoughts about what you'll do or what you'd like to do after you graduate?
After I graduate, I would like to attend college in state.
All right. Well,
Sure.
go ahead.
I'd like to say congratulations for this. A couple things. A, it is not easy being at the top of your class. That takes hard work and dedication. And, you know, I love that you advocate to share the Black experience. We need more young people to be out there to share your and ours experiences, you know, to let people know what we've gone through and, you know, advocating for yourself and others. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with being a strong, quiet leader because you get stuff done, and I'm sure you do. And I love your artwork. It is absolutely amazing. Are you going to sell those?
That one I'm keeping.
That's pretty, it's really amazing artwork. And thank you for being a part of this community, Charity.
Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
I can go. Charity, is there anything you don't do? I mean, being at the top of your class and being involved with the BSU and putting your leadership skills there, and then you're also an amazing visual artist. Like that's just kind of, that's a pretty amazing package all in one human being. So I really appreciate that. And Principal Gilman always finds, you know, she always manages to find someone who is more surprising in a different way than I ever anticipated. So thank you to you for bringing us yet another student who, you know, blows us away in yet another way. Charity, I'm wondering
if you could tell us a little bit about what it was like to work on that documentary and what your experience was of that, especially in these crazy times we're all living through. What about it did you enjoy the most or find the most challenging?
I thought it was really important that we do a documentary, and it was a team effort with myself and the rest of the BSU members.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that it was a shared experience, because sometimes it just turns into a group project where one person is doing all the work. So I'm glad to hear it wasn't that. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to meet you.
You too. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Lisa. Okay. I will second what the other counselors have said about how impressive you are. And in addition to the grades, the art, the engagement with the Black Student Union, I see you're also a swimmer on the swim team. So you really are an amazingly well-rounded person. I was curious about the art in your life. And, you know, I was somebody who I wasn't at the top of my class, but I was, you know, fairly good grades, but I have zero artistic ability. So I love it and I'm somewhat envious when people have both the smarts and the artistic ability. And I wondered sort of if you wanted to talk a little bit about at what age you got interested in art or how you started with your artistic endeavors.
Well, both of my parents are very artistic, and I found art to be a great way to express myself and what I wanted to say.
Have you been painting and drawing for a long time since you were younger?
Yes, but particularly in high school when I joined art class.
Uh-huh. Mhm. Well, it's lovely stuff. And I wish you all the best in whichever college you end up going to. They'll be lucky to have you. And I'm sure, we would like to hear how it goes in a few years. We'd like you to check back in with us. Good luck.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Angel.
I had questions more. I would love to learn more about the Black Student Union and how your experience with that has been, and how long you've been involved in that. And in addition to the documentary, what were some of the other things that you've been able to work on this year, if that's changed at all through the pandemic, just sort of how this year has really sort of impacted, the sort of the affinity groups that, have contributed so much to life, I think, at Milwaukie High School.
Well, the Black Student Union is a safe place for African American students to connect and share experiences. And it's been a wonderful thing to have during this pandemic when the world is really crazy, and have somebody who feels exactly how you feel.
I'm so glad to hear that that you've been able to continue to connect, through the pandemic. I think, it's really important for young people. I know my daughter's not in high school, but she sure misses her friends, and I think it's really important. I think, especially through your teenage years. So I'm really glad to hear that. I have a question for you. I noticed that it's you mentioned that you want to stay in state for college, which I think is great. But I just thought I might just put a plug for Pacific University, because I didn't see that one on your list. So another one you might want to consider.
Her husband coaches there. Full disclosure.
I figured you had so many on there, you wouldn't mind putting another one. Well, congratulations on all of your achievements. You're just, such a remarkable young woman, and I'm so pleased to meet you, and I wish you all the best. And thank you, Ms. G, again, for bringing such a lovely young person for us to meet and to honor today. So thanks for all that you're doing too.
Thank you. And Charity's very humble. I just want to say that. She's also an amazing dancer. She's just really talented all the way around. So, and she's super kind and humble and just a really neat person. So.
Yeah, very impressive young woman. I have so many questions, and we could spend all night. I've been thinking about all the kids this year and how hard it's been to deal with life in general and school in particular, and really in particular, kindergartners and seniors, right? Because kindergartners, their first year in school and they're not really in school. And seniors, their last year, the culmination, all those things that have been building up for years. And it's kind of exciting and wonderful to be a senior, and you're at home. Has that just been heartbreaking, or how are you guys making it through?
Well, I definitely miss my friends, but I wouldn't want to go to school if it's not safe.
Sure. Yeah. And the art class, were you still doing art classes all through school, or did you just do the one that got you sort of kicked off?
I did multiple different types of art classes.
So do you have access to the Academy of the Arts when you're?
Yes.
I don't know what the relationship is between Milwaukie High and the Academy of the Arts, and how much access kids have. That's great. It's a great opportunity. It's clear that you took advantage of it. Your art is wonderful. Are you thinking about going into art as a career? Or?
Yes.
there are good livings to be had doing that. I had one for a while. I was a photographer, and it's a good way to live if you can make it work.
Can we add in just a quick plug for the Milwaukie Arts Committee and the fact that sometimes we have galleries of local art in downtown Milwaukee when we have First Friday events, and people sell their work or just display it. But that's something to keep in mind, because people would really love to see what you're up to and what other Milwaukee high school students are up to too. But sorry, I just had to put that in there.
No, it's a great idea. We should connect her to the art committee so that they can
drawings and paintings.
Yeah. Well, like they said, everybody said it already. You're extraordinary. We need young leaders like you now more than ever. And so I am just can't wait to see how you blossom and become through college and your young adulthood. I hope you'll come back and catch us all up with the amazing things that you do. Scott, if you can put up because I don't have it.
Can you see it?
Nope, I see a black screen that says Scott Software. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Except it's blown up so much I can't see it all.
Oh, I can zoom out. Is it getting better?
A little bit. There you go. All right.
Okay.
The City of Milwaukee is proud to recognize for outstanding student achievement in academics, civic engagement, and extracurricular activities at Milwaukee High School, Charity Miller. Let it be known to all on this 16th day of March 2021, the City Council of the City of Milwaukee, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, recognize this student as an excellent example of the bright future of this community and nation. Congratulations, Charity. And at some point, I've made this offer to all the amazing young people that Carmen keeps bringing us. If traditionally we did a picture, you and I would do a picture together. For whatever reason, you might want that. After the pandemic is over, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to do that picture. And Scott will get you your letter and your plaque soon. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Charity. And Scott sends me your certificate, and I'll call you and let you know that it's in. I can send it to you, or you can come get it. And then also I get a video link because this is recorded. And so then I get a link, and then I'll also forward that to you.
All right.
Ms. G, can I ask you, I'm not remembering if we've seen the documentary before. Would you mind dropping us a link to that too?
Sure, I'd love that.
Thank you.
Yes, it's wonderful.
I was going to ask the same thing. Thank you.
I'll send it to Scott.
Okay. Cool.
Great.
All right. Do you have an update for us on how things are going there? And are you guys frantically trying to prepare to have kids back in the building?
Oh, yeah. So we have an update, and I was going to share a little video with you. But I did want Charity to know that, Charity, this is where we come to an end. So you're welcome to stay on. And if you have anything else you'd like to share with us, you're more than welcome to. But you don't have to stay for the rest of the city council meeting if you don't want to, because I know that there's a lot of items on the agenda, but it's up to you.
I actually have another Zoom meeting, so.
Okay.
But thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a good night. Okay, so Charity's very shy. She's a great young woman too, but I'm going to show a video really quickly and I'm going to run through the PowerPoint really quickly. I thought, because I always give updates, but I thought it would be really nice to share what I shared with the board the other night, so that you could see the work that we're doing at Milwaukie. We are preparing to come back in a hybrid model. We still don't have all the details nailed down. We don't, things are moving very quickly and they're changing very quickly. So I'm kind of just holding back and I'm expecting chaos, just putting it out there, at least for the first week or two. And part of the reason I'm doing that is we have already started bringing seniors in on Wednesdays that are struggling a little bit. And we want to make sure that they have the support that they need so that they graduate. And so I had all these like expectations on day one that things were going to be really perfect. Had the, all my little folders made and my list and that is not what happened. I had kids show up that I wasn't expecting, which was a good thing. But, so what I told myself with this next go round is expect chaos. We'll get through it in a week or two, which is really how school starts anyway, traditionally. And so just, that's where my mindset is. But I am going to share with you my PowerPoint really quick and I'll walk right through it. Okay, and you all let me know if I am, uh-oh.
We're seeing your email right now.
I know, I'm trying to get this bar off the top of my screen. Hold on. Nope, it won't let me get to that. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Nope, I'm still in there. Okay, Scott, you might have to share it. I can't move this screen up here.
Okay, we're sharing the video.
Oh, here we go.
You got it?
Yep. Okay. Sorry.
No one look.
Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Also with notes.
Yep, I'm moving it. Moving it. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I'm used to using Google. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to skip that, but just want to go over our core values really quickly. We are student-centered relationships, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and future ready. And every year we do a parade through the community and we celebrate one another and the community. And this is just a snapshot of it. We are student-centered, so every decision that we make is about our students and how our students' experience will be impacted by what we're doing. So we have currently students that are creating community and connection equity lessons. We feel that it's really important that our students are involved in what it is that they're learning and they're gaining 21st century skills while doing that. We have a student advisory group to the principal. We also have a youth advisory group council that has been working on lessons in our health curriculum around LGBTQ+, but they also do a lot of work around the school just to make kids feel welcome and provide advocacy for our students. All of our social media is student-led. And we, again, our decision-making is student-centered, and we do a lot around student voice. We feel that it's really important that we not only listen to our students, but hear their voices and then take action with the things that they share with us, making sure that we are making changes, because if there's issues that they bring up, it's really important that we not only tap into their voice. I think a lot of times we ask kids, what do you think? But then we don't always follow through to make those changes, and that's not respectful to the student. And so I think it's really important, we all do at Milwaukie, that students are empowered to have a voice. We are about relationships. We believe that relationships are key to creating a very good culture at a school. We want to know our students. We don't just want to know their names or just what they look like. We want to know who they are. We want to know their story so that we can make really strategic directions and decisions. We want to know what their interests and aspirations are. We also feel that way about our staff. And so we've done a lot of work to really get to know our staff and for our staff to get to know one another. And that's trickled down into the relationships that we build with our students and students building relationships with one another. Equity, diversity, and inclusion is huge. We do equity in everything that we do, every staff meeting, every time we get together, every time we're making a decision, we make sure that we talk about who are we leaving out, who are we including, what does this look like, what is the impact. And so we currently have a pretty large student and staff equity committee. Like I said, professional development always has equity components in it, and that is a huge focus for our school. We collaborate with a lot of diverse organizations. We're working with REAP, we're working with EOS, we're working with a lot of different organizations to help really elevate our students. We have diverse course selections, and we're adding more and more diverse course selections as we move forward. And it's really around student voice and what their needs are and wanting to bring in culture and community. We have culturally relevant events. We've brought in diverse poets, authors, speakers, Rima Zaman, Natasha Minto, Alex Dang. So we bring in authors that students get to talk to and meet. And then we have staff and student affinity groups. This is the first year that we started a staff affinity group, and it's been pretty powerful. So our student affinity groups are also pretty powerful, and they get to participate and have a place, like Charity said, where they get to talk to other students and have common experiences and be empowered to have a voice. So the last one is Future Ready. So just providing students with different things to really prepare them. A lot of times we think it's all about the academics, it's all about getting straight A's or AP, but there's a lot of soft skills that are important for students to learn: how to navigate, how to advocate, how to be involved in civil engagement, how to be a critical thinker, and all those things. One of the things that we noticed was our AP courses did not represent our student body. So this year we added 80 plus students to our AP courses, with a huge focus on adding students of color because they weren't represented in AP. So that's going to continue. Our students are doing really well, actually, in the AP courses, even during the CDL time. We want to create self-directed learners and give college and career opportunities for our kids. So we are making decisions to move in that direction. Some of the prevention and intervention supports that we currently have, we have engagement teams at every single level in our school right now because we are in CDL. It's very easy to lose students or not be able to support students. So we have all of my classified staff, my secretaries, everybody is on a team and they call kids every week. They call home. We look at, which students need more support and things like that to make sure that they are getting what they need. We have senior grad parents. That's actually thriving right now. A care team. Every student at the 9th grade is on a 9th grade team. So they have the same math, science, language arts teacher. And we've also added some support staff to that team. And then they also have a counselor. We have an EL team. So one of the things recognized this year in CDL is that we need to make sure that our communities that don't speak the language also have access and are getting the support that they need. And our EL team just presented to the staff the other day in a fishbowl about what they're hearing from our different communities, our immigrants, our different communities of color, and our EL communities. We provide lots of wraparound services. We have tutoring and culturally specific supports. Initiatives, really quickly, we're working with Educational Epiphany, EOS, REAP. One of the things we did is I noticed that like a lot of our students, if they either had an IEP or were in EL, they had a lot of support classes. And so we ended up moving and pushing to more of a push-in model and a co-teaching model so that students could have 2 teachers in a class where they're getting their needs met, but then they have access to their interests and aspirations and can take electives. And I didn't want their schedules to just be support classes or academics, or, I want them to have a broad scope of things that they get to participate in. And they're excited about being in school if they get to do things that they're interested in. So we collaborate with a lot of partners. We just had a residency with Milagro Theater, who did a play on Dolores Huerta, who's a civil rights organizer. And it was phenomenal. And they were in classrooms, language arts classrooms with students. And then we also had a talk back in the evening after they presented the film. This is our 2nd year working with Milagro Theater, and they're 6 miles away. And so we're really trying to bring in partners and other folks. I have the city in here because I feel that we are partners. We work with restorative justice practices, trauma-informed practices against, again, the Equity Task Force and student-led community inequity lessons for students by students. Next year, we're looking at adding more AP courses because we believe in supporting our kids, loving on our kids, providing them a culture at school where they feel welcome, but also continuing to push and believe in them and know that they can do things. And I think our kids told us in the beginning, sometimes we don't feel that you all believe that we can do it, that we're capable. And we definitely believe that. And so we're doing that by adding more courses that they say are important. So we're adding these courses right here: AP Seminar, Probability and Statistics, AP Psychology. We're adding cultural dance. We now have our dance studio back. So we will be offering folklorico, African dance, hip hop, two-step, and Asian Pacific Islander dance. We are adding music theory and composition. We're moving towards creating a recording studio and a vocal booth so kids can write their own music. There's a lot of healing that happens when kids are writing music, all of us when we write. And so that's a project that we're moving towards making happen. But we did add a music theory and composition class. We're also adding percussions for next year and then media arts. So our big thing this year is working with Dr. Danielle Dickey, who for school-wide, we've been doing a lot of work around accessing Tier 2 vocabulary. A lot of times we know that in schools where there's a difference of students that start kindergarten with parents that have a college degree as opposed to students who don't have parents that have a college degree. There's a difference of 30,000 words that kids come into kindergarten with. And that's pretty huge. And so we automatically, I think the system a lot of times thinks, oh, well, they need extra support, or they need this, or they need that, when it really is a systems issue. It's about how do we make sure that students have access to the vocabulary, to the things that they need. So we brought in Dr. Dickey, and he's been amazing. He's working with every single department to look at our objectives, but also just looking at making sure that students can access the vocabulary and making sure that we have the vocabulary that's used in math and science. Sometimes the same word is used very differently. And so we want to make sure that that's not confusing for kids, that they really understand the language, not watering language down, keeping like the higher level vocabulary along with vocabulary that we explain what it means, so that they're learning both at the same time. So as we say, access to Tier 2 vocabulary is a civil right. Every student should have it, and that's our goal. Not that only this year, but moving on to next year, we're going to continue this professional development with Dr. Dickey. So this is something our kids did, and they're so creative. But this is us. And the last thing I want to share with you is a video that they made that encompasses our core values. And they're not written, but it's just in their actions and the things that they remember about being in school and what they really appreciated. And after this, we're done. It's 2 minutes. That's it. Sorry it took so long and I went through it so quickly. I just didn't want to take up that much time.
That was great. A lot of information. Thank you very much. And that was a great little video.
Thank you.
Can I go back to high school?
Yeah. It's going to get better. The barbecue that we had, that you saw, that was our pride party. And we had that on the track. And we were going to do that again and invite you all to have a booth. But it was a really good community event. It was for our LGBTQ community, and everybody was involved. And our football team set up the decorations and people came and we barbecued. We had button making booth. We had face painting. We had music and bubbles. And it was a really, really cool event. And I think what impacted me the most is behind me, I heard a student say, "This is the best day of my life, that I can just be who I am at my school." Like what other school lets you just be who you are? And it was just such an impact for me, not only that you got to participate, that was happening for that student, but the idea that students can't be who they are, made me sad. I was happy to hear that, but like, I want all students across our country to feel that way. And so we're going to continue all the different celebrations. So.
Yeah. That is heartbreaking. They don't feel that all the time.
The students you bring us and the community that you share with us just really just gives me hope, because I mean, it sure didn't look like that when I was in high school. And I'm sure a lot of you can, it just didn't. And there just wasn't the acknowledgement and celebration of young people, and that you really, really, center and focus. And I just think, thank goodness we have you here in this community. Thank you so much. You and everybody on your team and all the students. You're doing incredible work here. We have a lot to learn from you and to be thankful for.
Thank you. I'm honored to serve this community. Thank you. All right. If there's no more questions, I'm going to say goodnight.
Have a great one. Good luck with the
Good luck.
rollout.
Yes, I will let you know. I'll keep you updated.
Video the chaos.
Ah, okay. All right, you all. Have a good evening.
Good night. All right. That was awesome. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community members' statements regarding city business. Those wishing to speak, please raise your hand or indicate that you wish to speak. Before you make your comments, please state your name and city residence for the record. If you would like the city to follow up with you, please submit your contact information to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. As council has other business items on the agenda this evening, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because information provided during the community comments may be new, the city manager will respond at the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. Before we begin, is there any follow-up from the March 2nd community comments, Ms. Ober?
Yes, there were a couple of discussions that occurred at the last meeting. We will be doing updates on the city council for two of those items that was brought up. The first was the community banking concept has been placed on a future agenda to receive further presentation for council to discuss. The second piece was a discussion about the NDAs and NDA funding. That has also been put on a future agenda to discuss with council. So both of those two items are forthcoming, and we'll be in touch with the individuals who brought up the second to make sure that they're able to attend the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, I know that we have one person that would like to speak, Michael Havlick.
And his hand was raised. It's been lowered, but Michael, I'm going to allow you to talk now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And wow, what a wonderful thing to see Charity receive her award. As I'm waiting here, I just came off a soccer field with my daughter and we beat LaSalle. So there's a whole bunch of celebration in the background if you hear that. So good evening, commissioners. I'm Michael Havlick. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Multifamily Northwest. Multifamily Northwest represents owners and managers of 275,000 rental units statewide. I'm here to offer comment on the housing emergency and rental protection measures that you'll be discussing later this evening, and I'm hoping to provide sufficient context that you will allow these to expire in June of 2021. Since April 19 of 2016, when the original ordinance was passed, a lot has happened. SB 608 was passed, providing protections for rent increases and certain no-cause evictions. And since SB 608, housing providers have been faced by a constant barrage of changing rules at the federal, state, county, and city levels. The pandemic has dramatically impacted both tenants and housing providers alike. Wildfires impacted our housing supply in September. It's estimated that statewide there's a rental housing supply shortage of 144,000 units. After working with the complex matrix of laws and ordinances across the state, we've come to the conclusion that landlord-tenant law is best made only at the state level. The complexity and risk is driving many housing providers out of the business locally and preventing investors from entering our market. As housing providers leave the business, housing choice becomes even more limited. I know this firsthand as I worked for 4 months with FEMA, the American Red Cross, and OHCS to help find housing options for households displaced by the wildfires. When faced with the additional risk of being a landlord or selling their rentals at extremely favorable prices currently, the small landlords are exiting the market quickly. And when single family homes leave the rental pool, it does so for a generation. We would encourage you to accept the sufficiency of the statewide protections and allow the ordinance to sunset. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to offer, if you have any questions for me about my concerns, I'd be happy to elaborate on them.
Anybody, any questions? Nope. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Is there anybody else, Scott?
I don't see anybody else, and I'll double check email. Nope.
All right. Then we will move on to tonight's consent agenda, which is longer than usual as items from the canceled February 16th meeting were moved to tonight.
Sorry, that was a hangover from last time.
I was going to say, that's not that long, Scott.
It's not that
Way
long.
longer
I'm
last
sorry.
time. Anyway, tonight's consent agenda includes minutes of the February 9th, 2021 study session, a resolution acting as a local contract review board authorizing an increase in the project authorization for construction of the 2020 McBride Avenue Improvement Project, a resolution acting as the local contract review board approving the award of a contract for on-call construction inspection services to Dow LLC and Murray Smith, Inc., and a resolution acting as a local contract review board approving the award of a contract for on-call material testing to Professional Services Industries, Inc. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. The consent agenda passes unanimously. Okay, our next item up is the fossil fuel divestment resolution. This will be presented by our Public Works Director, Peter Passarelli, and Climate Action Sustainability Coordinator, Natalie Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor Gamba and Council. I'm Peter Passarelli, the Public Works Director. Tonight with me is Natalie Rogers, our Climate Action and Sustainability Coordinator. And I'm going to let Natalie walk through some of the changes that we made to the resolution based off of our discussion with Council last Tuesday at our study session.
Hi, thank you, Peter. So my name is Natalie, Climate Action Sustainability Coordinator. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're bringing back to you today the fossil fuel divestment resolution and a companion letter to be sent to the Oregon State Treasurer and affiliated investment councils. I'm happy to pull up my screen if that would be helpful to show the edits that have been made to both the resolution and the letter. Otherwise, we can just have a good conversation about it that's been shared. What would be preferred?
Does anybody need it pulled up?
Great.
Put on my other screen.
Perfect. I can just quickly mention the changes that were made since last time. I heard an interest in really calling out the environmental justice components, both in the resolution and the letter. I also heard questions around, deadlines related to asking when these changes or when divestment should occur. And then I also heard a recommendation or approval of recommendation to add in reference to Executive Order 2004 from Governor Brown, as well as a recommendation to create a committee or work group similar to the Public Utility Commission work groups that have been called in response to Executive Order 2004, except in this case for listening to community climate goals and how that relates to Oregon State Treasurer and financial decision making. So in the resolution, I did include a new whereas that really calls out environmental and air quality impacts caused by fossil fuel extraction, transport, and consumption, disproportionately impacting the health and livability of communities of color, Indigenous, youth, elder, and other communities on the front line of climate change. And I did run this by John, our equity program manager, and so he gave his blessing on that line. And then also I did call out particular more jurisdictions, Metro and Multnomah County, having divestment resolutions, and I changed that advocate to called upon in the resolution as requested. And then in the letter, I expanded upon the environmental justice concerns using fossil fuels. And then I also really called out the Executive Order 2004 and then asked to encourage the state to develop a plan to hold listening sessions and workshops with local governments to incorporate their goals into department operations. And I gave a timeline of that of 2022, but I'm open to suggestions or recommendations from council for that to change. And then I'm hoping to, with your approval and after this is passed, hopefully it's passed, I will be sending it out to the treasurer, and then I can also share this with other communities to show them that we've passed a resolution. So I'd be open to any other suggestions, thoughts, feedback on the letter or resolution.
Anybody, anything?
Well, so we had some discussion last time about is 5 years enough? That other jurisdictions were taking longer timelines. I mean, I think our letter says take steps to divest within 5 years. It doesn't say be completely divested within 5 years. So maybe that's good enough. I just want to sort of call out that we had discussed that before. I don't feel like I am knowledgeable enough to really say which way it should be.
Yeah.
I did.
Sorry, go ahead.
I did also want to point out that there were a couple of references in here to us taking action on February 16th that obviously need to be updated to March 16th. Yeah, in the second paragraph of the letter, sort of in the middle of that paragraph, it says February 16th. That obviously needs to be updated, but.
Yes, and thank you for that. And I just changed that, and I will make sure that's incorporated. I will say that no community that I've come across in Oregon has a timeline associated with this work. I looked at Metro, Ashland, other communities, and they didn't put a timeline to it. I didn't receive any feedback on if there's any alternative timelines that council would like to consider. I did talk to the mayor and 5 years seemed still agreeable. And then you're right, there is the taking steps within 5 years, so it's not a hard deadline on that. But then with the addition of creating a listening session and work group within the first year by 2022, I'm hoping that could also mean that we're starting the process, not at, 2027 or whatever. Great.
Anything else? Anybody else?
Good work. Thanks, Natalie.
Of course.
Work.
Thank you all. So I'm hearing that right now the only change is I just need to make sure that date is changed to March 16th, and then everyone is okay with the letter. Great.
In that case, I would entertain a motion.
I can make the motion. I'll move to approve the resolution in support of divestment from fossil fuel industries for the state of Oregon funds.
And second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution in support of divestment from fossil fuel industries for the state of Oregon funds. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. This hopefully will be the first step. Well, it's kind of the second step because we already divested from fossil fuels by changing banks. The bank that the city now works with does not invest in fossil fuels. Our old bank did. It is also saving us money to have done that. So the argument that doing the right thing for the environment is expensive is proven once again to be a fallacy. Hopefully this step will set into motion a larger process and somewhat of a movement to really pressure the treasurer and the investment board to begin doing this work, both for environmental reasons and for financial reasons. Thank you for that work, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is the Sparrow site goals discussion. This will be presented by our development project manager, Allison Wicks. Welcome back, Allison.
Thank you. Good to be back. I'll share my screen.
Well, Allison's getting that ready. It does look like at some point there's interest in taking comment if council would like to do so at some point. Just pointing out.
On this item?
On Sparrow site, yes.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that after her presentation.
Great. All right, so yes, good to be back. For the record, I am Allison Wicks. I'm the development project manager for the city of Milwaukie, and I'm here with Layla as well. I don't know if Layla, you want to jump in and say hi.
Hello, everyone.
So tonight we're going to give an update on the Sparrow Street project and ask council to review a resolution on project goals, but then consider that resolution on the April 6th council agenda. We were last in front of you in January where we talked about the project goals for the Sparrow Street site, and we have revised the goals based on council feedback. As an overview, the Sparrow Street property is a triangle-shaped site in the Island Station neighborhood. It's in close proximity to downtown Milwaukie and the Orange Line MAX station at Park Avenue. City of Milwaukie purchased the site in 2019 for the purpose of bringing affordable housing to the city, and it's about a 1 acre of developable land on the site. I'll just give a quick overview of our project timeline as it stands, kind of looking at the property disposition process, site design, and community engagement. In January and now tonight, council has reviewed the project goals. In April, we're looking to have council consider a resolution to set the goals scheduled for April 6th. This is so we can attend the neighborhood association meeting tomorrow night and talk about the goals as well there. Next steps in the disposition process are a public hearing, declaring the property surplus, and authorizing the request for qualifications, then selecting a development team. In the site design part of the project, we started the site access study this month, and site design will begin once the development team is on board. Community engagement also started this month, presenting tomorrow night at the March Island Station NDA meeting. And we've started outreach to neighbors of the site by phone call, emails, and mailing. And then in the fall, we'll have a more extensive community engagement process around the site design once there is a development team. A little bit of additional information on the site access study. We've contracted with HHPR, a civil engineering firm, to conduct the survey work of Southeast Sparrow Street, Southeast 26th, and the site itself. And they'll develop concept designs for access and frontage improvements. This is the area that will be surveyed of the streets outlined in red, and property owners both in the general area and the study area have been notified. We're looking at the streets because this is, oh, I had a photo in here. Well, if you've been down there, the streets in Island Station are about 15 feet wide. And we're planning to use the approved Island Station Neighborhood Greenway as a model. And we plan to return to council in May to talk about those conceptual designs. For community engagement, as the project progresses, we'll continue our community engagement efforts. I'll present at Island Station NDA meetings. We'll also utilize mailings, pilot articles, project websites, and hopefully we'll be able to host events or tours as we're able to later in the year, and then also utilize Engage Milwaukie as well. The next two slides are the proposed development goals. And these have been revised based on council feedback in January. I think the most changes were in this first goal and how it's stated. This new version refers to both rental and home ownership, and then looks at a preference for 0 to 30% units under current zoning. But if there's a zoning change, which we're hoping to align this with our implementation of our new zoning code, that we would look to have both 0 to 30 units and up to 60% units. With that, our other goals I think are fairly similar, maybe a few wording differences from January, but they relate to unit size, minority, women, business, enterprise, contracting, preservation of tree canopy, sustainable design, affirmative outreach, lack thereof of City Milwaukie financing, and project delivery. Our next steps for the Sparrow project, as I mentioned, tomorrow night, we'll take in the show to the NDA meeting in Island Station. Then the site access study will, we want to come back in May and share the results of that, and looking for council to set a resolution to set goals in April, and then we'll move forward with the rest of the disposition process later in summer 2021. So we had a couple of questions in the staff report, but open to any other questions as well.
I have, I know that we are precluded from targeting a specific group of people to have access to this housing. But to whatever degree we can legally do it, I still would like to see this in an effort to reduce the number of homeless school kids in the North Clackamas School District. I wrote an additional whereas that I would like to add to the resolution that I typed into the chat. And it just points out that issue. Other than that, I think it looks good.
Allison, I was wondering if, we've heard about site access issues in prior reports, and I'm just wondering where that is at this point in time. If you've got further information on what's going to work, what's not going to work, what issues we're hitting, yada, yada.
I would say we have just gotten our civil engineering firm under contract. So we'll start survey work, I believe, next week. So they'll be kind of surveying and figuring out the property boundaries versus where the pavement is today in those existing streets. So we'll have more information soon.
And have we heard anything further from the fire department on what sort of access they need? Because I know that there's been sort of a differing opinions on what we've learned from them in the past.
We'll certainly bring them in to review the results of our survey. So that's where our engagement is with the fire department.
And if we're not talking about the next steps, declaring surplus and going out with the RFQ until late summer, why would we not wait to set the goals until after we have, I don't know how the access study might affect our thinking about the goals, but I guess why are we in a hurry to set the goals? Why wouldn't we wait for the access study to be complete?
I'll let maybe Layla, I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but.
Sure. I think we've been talking about goals for the site since last March, and we were slowed down quite a lot by COVID. So we feel that it's important to set goals before we declare the property surplus. So it's really at this point, if council would prefer that we wait, then we have to wait to do kind of all the other steps. That's certainly something that we can do. We would just need to probably do the adoption of the goals and the public hearing to declare the property surplus all at the same time. So if there's concern, I don't see any reason why we can't wait. But by passing them now, we kind of set the framework that we can start to work and get the staff's also behind the scenes working on getting the RFP and getting everything lined up so that we can issue it as soon as possible. But we do, like you said, want to wait until we get that feedback from the access study.
I guess I don't have a strong feeling either way. If the access study does generate something that makes us want to revisit the goals, we can always revisit the goals. It just seemed like maybe it was one less meeting for you to not have to come with the goals in 2 weeks and wait until we have the access study. And then at that point, we can sort of endorse the goals or, whatever. But I don't feel strongly either way. The goals are something we can always revisit if we feel the need based on newly acquired information. So
we're happy to defer to council on the approach.
Whatever approach it is that moves this along the fastest is the approach that I would like to see occur. It's been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. So.
Yeah,
that was our thinking too, but
I agree with that. But I also want to be, but I think, you Lisa, you bring up a good point. And I think Layla, your response maybe concerns me a little bit less about I'm not really sure that they need to be tied to, I'm not really sure what we would learn that would change our goals, but also don't want you to have to come. I mean, I guess if we can feed 2 birds, Anne, is that what you say? Feed, I said feed, not
Feed
kill.
2 birds with 1 scone.
Yes, that's what I said. I said,
yeah. Thanks.
Feed 2 birds, then I'm fine with that, as long as, if it's not going to slow us down at all, because it sounds like we could do it at the same time, that'd be okay with me too.
I'll just share the reason our schedules is a little wonky. I was supposed to be at the February Island Station meeting, which got canceled because of the ice storm. So then we would have met with the community, then we could do goals tonight. And so now we're a little out of alignment. So that's why we weren't going to do the resolution until the 6th.
Yeah, it's a great point. And the only thing I would add to that is that we wanted the chance to talk to the community before you finalized the goals. The only thing I will add is that to kind of keep things moving along is the property surplus declarations, kind of our next big step. And it felt to me having council endorse goals in advance of that action would give us and the community some certainty about what will be happening with that site. So that would be my only encouragement of keeping us on the same track. We could also do the goals resolution by consent. So that helps save time on the agenda as well. But we're just trying to be as open and transparent as this process is possible. But that would be the only reason to do it, because we can declare it surplus. We can always amend the goals prior to issuance of the RFQ if new information comes along. You certainly have that prerogative.
Well, I do. I think it would be nice, the ice storm was not something we anticipated. And if it's not going to cost us much in the process, and I'm not hearing that it's going to cost us much to have the opportunity to engage with the neighborhood before finalizing those goals, I think it would be nice to be able to do that.
Anybody else, anything?
I would just say there's been an exchange, there's been a question and an answer on the chat. And I think it would be great if somebody read that into the record, just for the people who are watching and can't see the chat.
Well, I was going to invite at least one person who's asked to speak. So I was going to invite the people who are asking to speak an opportunity to do so, and then we can go from there. And if that doesn't get covered in that part of the conversation, then we can read it into the record. So if council doesn't have any further conversation at this point, Scott, let's go ahead and let folks in. I think you have Charles.
I only saw interest from Charles to speak, but there are 3 people in the audience. So I'll allow Charles to talk here.
Okay, anybody else who wants to speak, please raise your hand on the Zoom thing.
Mr. Bird, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know if you can see me. I didn't dress up.
We cannot, but we can hear you.
Okay, great. I have a couple of comments, and it's a kind of the order of thinking about this project. And the first order is that providing housing to the homeless, and it kind of goes past the goals into alternatives. So I'd like the council to ask engineering and the community to consider, what are your alternatives? Because you may have some alternatives for X number of houses, and what is the cost of those alternatives? So you can have it in your mind. What would be the cost if, let's say, it's five places? How could you put 5 families in a house, and what would the cost of that be as an alternative? And there might be alternative properties around Milwaukie that could be used for that, and I think there are, that could be purchased and then create the housing opportunity for the homeless, and that would satisfy that goal of the affordable housing. The other sub part of that goal is how many houses are needed, and how many houses would the ratepayers in Milwaukie want to provide. And that would be, I don't hear any discussion about that our goal is to provide X number of houses. So I think council is not thinking about that. I don't see it in the document anywhere. In the alternatives, you haven't asked for alternatives to be presented so you can actually see whether this is better or worse than the alternatives. That would be a first thinking. The second thinking would be, what is the cost? And I would ask engineering to provide you with a cost to develop this property as you're thinking about it, so that you know what the cost is. And yes, at this stage, the accuracy may be a 10 to 20% accurate, but at least you'll have an idea, ballpark, that it's going to, where it's going to end up, from high to low for cost. And that would give you steerage into this project. And then the third part of that is, what's the best sustainable development for the property? And I don't think you're asking that either. Coming in with the idea of putting homeless on this former industrial site that's contaminated, maybe minor contamination, but in my experience, you never know until you start digging. And I've been on projects that you just keep digging, and pretty soon it's pretty expensive. So I don't know what the logic is for putting people, for congregating, say, lower income people in an area, in an industrial site next to a railroad track and a trolley trail, but a pretty noisy railroad track. I don't know why that is a thought that is important for our community. To put poor people, disadvantaged people, cluster them together in this location, which is, I heard the opener saying that it was near 2 light rail stations, but if you look at the map again, you can say you couldn't be further away from one or the other because it's pretty smack in the middle. So it's pretty far. If you couldn't get further away from either station than you are by putting it smack in the middle. If you moved it a little bit, you'd be nearer one. So those are my points. What does it cost? What are the alternatives? Is this the best way to provide homeless homes? And is this the best use for the site? Those things I don't see in your goals, and I don't see in your in this piece. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Mayor, would you mind because I think a couple of clarification I think that staff could probably bring in response to some of those comments. For one, it's zoned residential, it's not an industrial area. So, I mean, I can provide that clarification, I guess, myself. But I suppose as we're taking these comments, I guess I would just ask that since we have some of the information tonight, that we would clarify and provide it, if that's okay with you.
Mr.
You're
Mayor,
muted.
I think that's a good idea, but I was going to wait and see what everyone who wanted to testify had to say before we had staff respond to them. So, Scott, is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Am I muted? Was I muted the whole time? I had some really great thoughts. I see nobody else interested in speaking, Mr. Mayor. I don't see any raised hands. But as noted by Councilor Beatty, there is a chat discussion, and I could read that into the record now if you like, or.
Sure. Why don't you do that, and then we'll have staff respond.
Okay. So at the start of the conversation for this part, Mr. Byrd indicated he wanted to speak, and we noted that. And then Mayor Gamba wrote, whereas I think this was your recommended whereas language, whereas there are typically around 300 school children in the North Clackamas School District experiencing houselessness at any given time, and housing insecurity often sets a child up for chronic difficulties for life. And then Stacy Johnson wrote, can you review what the proposed zoning changes you are referring to for development of that property? And I believe in response to that, Layla Aman wrote back, hi, Stacy, we don't know the changes yet. They are in process as part of the comprehensive plan implementation project. I sent you an email about a while back. Happy to send more info if you need it. And then Stacy Johnson wrote, thank you, I have it. Just wasn't sure if zoning changes would be looked at specifically by site. Obviously, increased density on this site will have a ripple effect on livability in the area. And then Miss Johnson again, or Stacy Johnson again, posted 1/3 mile walk to a train that goes to downtown Portland. No grocery, no medical services, no social services. And that's all that is in the chat at the moment.
All right. So Allison or Layla, would either of you like to comment on any of this further?
Sure, I can jump in. I just want to note Councillor Falconer's point that this is zoned industrial, not zoned industrial. It is zoned residential. The property was purchased for the purpose of developing housing. So the alternatives that we would analyze on this property, we've looked at actually multiple scenarios here, have all been around housing and housing that meets the goals that council sets. So that's sort of how staff evaluates the project. In terms of cost, we will be costing out the potential access improvement costs. So that will be one piece of it. As part of the remedial action plan, which is necessary as part of our DEQ work, we'll be looking at the cost of remediation. And then once we know what the development costs are, that's when we have a development partner and we know what the site plan is. And so those questions will be answered sort of incrementally through the process. Is there anything else that I may have missed, Allison, or anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, there was a question about buying houses as an alternative to this. Could you maybe clarify the role that the city plays in this project and how that's different from being landlords, for example?
Yeah. Thank you, Council President. So yes, the city, when we get involved in projects like this, it's typically through land that we own, which we negotiate in partnership with a developer who then develops, owns, and operates it. So the city is not in the business of providing housing. We strategically acquire property that we then put out for purposes of public benefit. So that's the role that we play in terms of redevelopment. We don't purchase houses and renovate them and put them up for sale. Some housing authorities do that, some nonprofits, land trusts can do that sort of thing. But the city's role in redevelopment typically happens through partnership, and it's typically done by a developer and not the city. The city plays a partner as the landowner, and then we negotiate public benefit with the party that's awarded the site. That's the role that we play.
And to be more specific, when Lila said that we purchased this property for housing, we purchased this property for affordable housing. Very specific.
Correct.
Anybody else? Anything else?
I'll just add that planning is also on the NDA agenda tomorrow night to give an update on the comprehensive plan process. So that'll be a good place to anyone that's interested to get kind of a in-depth look into what the new housing code could look like.
I was just going to, there was an additional comment written in the record into the chat from Mr. Bird. He says, yes, it is zoned residential. However, the previous use was a heavy equipment yard and support site for ODOT highway construction. Rezoning did not change its history. And then the second comment from Mr. Bird, estimated costs can be made at any time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Does council have any further discussion on this issue? You guys need any specific questions answered as of tonight?
I guess the one specific question I would have is, should we be coming back next council meeting to adopt the goals, or would you prefer that we wait?
I think coming back next council meeting to adopt the goals, and I assume that along with that, you'll be giving us a presentation about your conversation with the NDA And then we'll have a conversation about the goals and presumably adopt something.
We can certainly do that. Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's looking like we're getting head nods from a majority of council, but can
Yes,
we do a
that
vocal
works.
just to make sure? Thank you.
You want to poll? Is that what you said?
Just a straw poll. I just wanted a vocal. So yes or no. Perfect. Thumbs are great. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
no, I'm
Thank you very
fine
much.
with that as long as we are getting that presentation. There was some talk of putting it on consent, and I do think we need the presentation and the opportunity for the neighborhood, comments again. So, yeah.
Sounds good. It's back on regular. Thank you.
And are we okay with my suggested additional whereas?
I am. Yes. I think that I think that the goal of having family size units is going to get you there anyway. And that was the reason, but I agree. Putting that in there as context, I think is a great idea.
Thank you.
I ran a couple of Google searches while you were talking, and I think you can say over 300 fairly comfortably, because it looks like it's been over 300 for a few years.
It has, strangely, at this moment, it's 190.
Really?
They're not sure. There's several factors that they think are causing that. One is that we've had the moratorium on people being evicted. So there's not that flow, right? The other piece is they think because they've been holding classes virtually and not having actual contact with a lot of children, don't even turn on, as the teacher in the room can tell us, don't even turn on their video sometimes. So teachers have less of an idea how children are, where they are, what's going on for them. And the folks at Wichita Center think that may also have an effect. They said as kids are starting to re-engage physically with the schools, they're seeing those numbers creep up. So, but she said it was very safe to say 300-ish is kind of the area it tends to. The very first time when we bought the property, it was at 460. So
families are living together as well, so that also plays a part.
Yeah, and that's the other piece. There's a lot of families doubling up. So, in any case, it's a safe number. It's 1 would be too many, and 300 is way too many. So, anything else on this one? Anybody? No. All right. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me find my.
And then it's the same team, so they're just hanging out here.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. Go team. Renter protection measures.
On to the next. Well, thank you, Mayor and councilors. I'm going to share my screen with you. Which one is it? And I'll ask the question, can you see my screen? Okay. And it's the one that doesn't have my notes, I hope. Sorry. Great. All right. Well, thank you. I'm here tonight to talk to you about primarily the renter protection measure. Just to give a little bit of context and background for folks, we are talking about two ordinances, Ordinance 2117 and 2118, which were first adopted by Council in 2016. Ordinance 2117 declares a housing emergency, and then Ordinance 2118, enabled by the housing emergency, approved renter protections requiring 90 days instead of 30 or 60 days to find secure new housing. After we met with council in October, doing our housing update, City Council discussed the options of allowing the housing emergency to expire and to adopt permanent renter protections. So we did a little homework into terms of what the housing emergency does, whether or not we can have a permanent ordinance for renter protections. It should be noted at the time that we did our renter protection, Senate Bill 608 didn't yet exist. So our current ordinance is tied to the housing emergency. So we would need to adopt a new resolution to make these permanent so that it would be separate from the housing emergency. But just to give folks enough, a background, the housing emergency enables the city to utilize resources, designate persons to coordinate the work, and order other such measures as necessary to protect the life, safety, and health of persons and property and environment. As I mentioned, this was first adopted in 2016. It's been extended 7 times. It's in 6-month increments. So every 6 months, we come to council, typically in June and then again in December, to renew these. This can be terminated by resolution when the emergency no longer exists or when the threat of an emergency has passed. The renter protections. So the purpose of this was to provide residential renters in the city with adequate protections in case that they are served with a no-cause eviction. So the focus is on no-cause evictions. Ours allows for 90 days notice, and then no-cause evictions are for reasons that are other than for cause. And I'll talk a little bit about what those are. Again, we've extended that 7 times, 6-month increments. It's set to expire June 1st. And as I mentioned, this originally was tied to the housing emergency because at the time, Senate Bill 608 did not exist. Senate Bill 608 was passed in 2019. It places 2 limits on evictions and rent increases. So for tenants who have been in homes for a year or more, they can no longer be evicted without a reason. So prior to that, Senate Bill 608, that protection did not exist. It now exists statewide. It also limits rent increases to 7% and then the annual inflation rate. There are some exceptions. If it is within the first year of tenancy, 30 days notice is required for a no-cause eviction. And then there are some qualified landlord exceptions. So a few of those are listed here. If a property has only 2 units and 60 days notice is required, if the tenant has lived in the home 1 or more years, or 30 days if it's less than a year. The qualifying landlord reasons, this came up last time, so I just want to reiterate them, that landlords can terminate tenancy after the first year for the following reasons. They either intend to demolish the unit or use the unit for something other than a residence. The landlord intends to make repairs or renovations to the unit. The landlord or immediate family plans to move in, or the landlord has sold the unit to someone who has moved in. So these are Senate Bill 608, and those are the protections. So if a landlord owns a property, wants to sell it, there is some flexibility there. Just to give folks an understanding of what's different between our ordinance versus Senate Bill 608, we've summarized the main points here. City ordinance requires a 90-day notice if no cause eviction occurs within the first year of tenancy. The state requires 30. After the first year of tenancy, and if the landlord resides on the property or the property only has 2 units, city ordinance requires 90 days, and Senate Bill 608 requires 60. The last time we spoke with you about this, the Portland metropolitan area realtors provided testimony, and they stated that there was a 60-day notice in Portland's measure to address what happens when it's basically what private banks require, that once you close, that you need to be living in the space within 60 days of close. And so we went and looked for that language in Portland's ordinance. We couldn't find it. We reached back out to PMAR, and they were very helpful for us and confirmed that, in fact, it is not included in Portland's ordinance. It is also not included in the state law. And so based on that, staff, council decides to maintain our renter protections, we do not recommend that you use this 60-day homeowner occupancy requirement because it would be more restrictive than what the state currently requires, and that could be problematic. But we did do our homework and wanted to confirm that. And so I just wanted to share that we did hear PMAR and we did look into that. And then that's what we've learned. So with that, we were really at a point where we're asking council what you would like us to do next. Do you wish to maintain the renter protections permanently and adopting a new ordinance in June when this is set to expire? Do you have an interest in allowing both to expire? There was some conversation at our last meeting that the kind of vacancy rates we're experiencing, last time we were just below 4%, are starting to be kind of, it's sort of the new normal. And so you all had some conversation about that as well. So we just wanted to bring that back to you for further discussion. And then finally, if that's the case, council does have the option of letting both expire and letting 608 govern renter protections in Milwaukie. So at this point, I'm happy to open it up for any questions you might have. I do want to acknowledge Christina Fadenrecht is here, and then Justin Garricky, our city attorney, have been working tirelessly on this. And so if there's questions I can't answer, surely between the three of us, we can try to get most of them. But with that, I will hand it over to council for discussion, and staff will be happy to answer any questions. Unless there's any objection, I'm going to stop sharing my screen unless you would still like to look at this slide. Okay.
And we might want to look at some of the earlier slides, the comparison slide. A slide back, I think on this one, or maybe that one, you said you wouldn't recommend enacting something because it was more restrictive than the state. But I mean, anything that we're doing here is going to be more restrictive than the state. I mean, if we keep other than letting it lapse, any version of the ordinance we adopt is going to be more restrictive than the state.
Yeah, and I want to correct myself. We would have been less restrictive, I apologize, than the state if we implemented the 60 days. So great point. I misspoke. We would be less restrictive. So you're exactly right. What we're doing is more restrictive. That's okay. Being less restrictive, not okay. So sorry for the confusion there.
Anybody else, anything?
I have a very off-the-wall question that is probably unfair for staff, so I'll preface it honestly. When we're talking about for-cause evictions, this experience is happening to someone I know where they are neighbors to someone who is exhibiting threatening, bigoted behavior. Is that the sort of thing that is considered typically and included within rental agreements? I think that would warrant, that would be grounds for eviction.
Yeah, and I know that you can issue, so violations of the lease agreement. So disruptions, that could be, depends on the lease itself. But if there is a written violation, I think it's typically 3 that are received, then that can become a for-cause eviction. But the tenant does have to get notice. They typically have to get a warning. And it's often tied to whatever the lease agreement is. So in that case, yes, if there was enough complaints and there were appropriate and proper notices provided, then the landlord would likely have the ability to evict a person for cause. Obviously, every instance is different, so I can't speak specifically, but generally, I think something like that would fall into a violation, and then there would need to be notice given.
So broadly speaking, lease agreements probably have provisions in them that reflect that if a landlord is getting lots and lots of complaints about a tenant, there is a process by which that can lead to a for-cause eviction. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I would just add that termination of tenancies for cause is governed by statute in a lot of case law. And so a lot of, what is contained in a lease is typically dictated by what the statutes say. And so there's a variety of reasons that are outlined in the statute, and usually a well-prepared lease will parrot those. I don't know the specifics of what you're indicating, but my belief is just off the fly that there's probably some version of a for-cause eviction that might be applicable in that situation. But all of these things come down to the facts of a specific case. So it's really hard to make broad, sweeping generalizations about a particular relationship between a landlord and a tenant.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Can you go back to the slide with the landlord exceptions? So these do not, I mean, there's the first one that's about duplexes or 2-unit things. This applies no matter the size or how many units a landlord owns?
Mm-hmm. That's my understanding.
That is correct. These are the 4 carved out landlord-based reasons that you are allowed to terminate a tenancy, and it's regardless of what the tenant has done. So no cause evictions, which is another word for saying regardless of whether or not the tenant's done anything, after the first year of tenancy are limited to these 4 reasons.
But 90-day notice is required. So that's what we would be required.
In Milwaukie.
Right. We would be essentially providing our emergency ordinance, which it was passed before this, already provided 90 days notice. The statute in this case provides 90-day notice for any of these 4 reasons. And then that's, you brought up 2 issues. The second issue is there's what I call the duplex provision. And that's, for people, if they have a tenant who lives on the property, maybe even within the same dwelling unit or in a separate dwelling unit or in a duplex on the same property, there are reduced notice requirements in that situation. And I think those were some of the give and take that took place during the statute's formation down in Salem to help somebody out, in case they just really needed to move somebody out because there was a disagreement or a fight between a small property owner who rents out a unit. And that's probably some public policy reasons to avoid, some because the landlord lives on the site, for that exception to apply to help alleviate tensions that might exist between the landlord and a tenant in that situation.
So is it a fair assessment is it an accurate assessment that scenario, as well as tenancy within the first year, is what our ordinance addresses beyond what SB 608 addresses?
I think when you distill it down, those are the 2 material differences.
Okay.
Is there any way to know, like, if the majority of no cause evictions, single family dwellings or multi units?
I can't answer that question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether Layla or Christina can comment on that. We probably need somebody from a housing perspective that has looked into those issues. I'm sure those statistics might be compiled. There's currently a lot of legislative activity happening around the landlord-tenant relationship right now in Salem. Nothing specific to this. However, there's hearings and bills get gut and stuffed and changed all the time. So it's really hard to say between now and the end of the session what changes are going to happen to what's currently being proposed. But some of that data might be being generated to help those discussions that are currently existing.
And I have one more question. So why would, is it PARM and these other groups, why would they oppose this?
PMAR's specific objection was that both the statute, our emergency ordinance, and Portland's ordinance can put a potential first-time or anytime home buyer in a difficult situation in that they buy a new home that a tenant lives in, and they wish to move into that home. Their loan documents have a condition that says they have to occupy that home within 60 days. But the statute or the ordinance provides that they have to give 90 days notice. And so it puts them in a precarious financing situation. And PMAR's interests, they represent realtors. Their interests are making sure that their potential home buyers and home sellers don't get tripped up in a process. As Layla pointed out, that wasn't really addressed in the statute. However, there's an exception if the seller, if the seller, or if the landlord owns a home and is selling it, but they still require 90 days notice. So does Portland's ordinance.
So the thing about that is that's all solvable. You go to your tenant and you say, I'm going to put the house on the market in a month. This is your 90 days notice, because if you're selling a house in the Portland metro region, it will sell in a week.
I looked at Redfin today, and the Milwaukie homes, the average time on market is 5 days.
Exactly.
So yeah, you have every reason to give that tenant notice, ahead of listing the house. Yeah.
And I don't think that's a restriction that the banks pay any attention to. They might have it in their contract for some reason, but for example, the last house that I bought, we discovered it had lead paint everywhere before we moved in, and we spent 3 months or 4 months renovating that before we moved in. We didn't occupy it. We didn't go to the bank and say, we're not going to occupy it. We just didn't do it.
I can't dispute any of that. I don't know. These are just issues that PMAR has raised. I actually don't know the real world implications of that dysfunction between the statute and somebody's loan documents. And I also don't know how many people have received relief by virtue of 90 days notice versus 60-day notice. Somebody's got statistics. I don't know who they are, and I don't know whether they're complete. So it's really, everybody's advocating for their different positions based on who their clients are. It's really hard to tell who has a complete set of statistics to really look at this. I don't believe we have heard, and I'll ask Layla to confirm or even to say I don't know, but I don't believe that we have heard that the additional time has resulted in any relief to any particular tenant. But I can't say that for certain.
Oh, I absolutely can. I know that we were able to find housing for some elderly people that only because they had 90 days notice after they had tried for 60 days to find it on their own and couldn't. And we were able to connect them with some people that allowed them to sell. I can tell you for a fact that it's helped. And Debbie, to your question earlier, the Community Alliance of Tenants may well have that data on single family and multifamily, how many of which, and I can probably still connect you with them. I think the executive director has relationships that moved on, but they're a good source.
Yeah, that's something staff can look into, Mayor, if you could share that with us too. But I do think the data would be hard to collect, so I'd be curious to see how they would do that, because many of these end up being private matters and nobody reports them. We have not received any direct feedback from community members about whether or not this has helped or hindered. And then just further follow up on your question, Councilor Nicodemus, what I've heard from the gentleman that spoke today and some other folks, the concern is just different standards across different jurisdictions and the complexity that creates. That's kind of one of the reasons that I've heard.
Does one take precedence over the other? So if it's Milwaukie, then Milwaukee's ordinance takes precedence over.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So our ordinance is is stricter than SB 608. So where that occurs, ours I think prevails. Justin can correct me if I'm wrong. And then Senate Bill 608 is still there. So anything that we don't address is addressed in that state law.
The Senate Bill 608 provides the minimum requirements. Portland's ordinance was challenged in a Supreme Court case in the state of Oregon, and that kicked out a whole bunch of language about it being a minimum requirement in the statute. And so jurisdictions are allowed to add certain things as long as they don't make compliance with the statute impossible. Right. So if the statute says you have to give 60 days notice, if we require 90 days notice, you're still in compliance with the 60-day notice. So you can comply. Allowing 30 days notice when the statute provides 60 days notice would make it impossible to comply with the statute. So that's a simple example of what stricter, I guess, is relative to what seat you're sitting in. So that's kind of a real numbers example.
And since Portland came up, I think the other piece to theirs is that they have some relocation assistance requirements built in various situations.
That's correct.
We have not done that.
So Mr. Havlick's concern about landlords facing piecemeal different rules in different places. I have a vague recollection that Christina in some prior meeting gave us a sort of breakdown as to our rental properties and how many are somebody who just owns one or two versus somebody who might own a whole lot, or that's a company or whatever. Do we have a good sense of how many of our landlords in Milwaukie own properties outside Milwaukie?
I do not know.
I'm not aware of any data set that has that information. We have a list of people who have registered their rental homes they have a license for their rental registration, but that's as far as we have.
Okay, so we know like how many, we could say how many people own fewer than 3 units or 3 units or fewer in Milwaukie, but that doesn't mean they don't also own in Portland and Gresham and everywhere else.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and the owner might be listed as like some LLC or something. So it could be that the same person owns multiple properties in Milwaukie, but they're owned by different entities. I mean, I know I can think of one example of that that we all know.
So the other thing that both Layla and Justin alluded to was, we don't know what's going on in Salem this term. Is anything going to happen that's going to change any of this?
So I did look around a little bit. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Councilor Beatty had a little delay, I think. I did look around a little bit. There's a couple of bills that, and I want to thank Kelly Brooks, by the way, who pointed me to a short list of items so I could see what was happening in a short amount of time. There are a couple of bills that have had public hearings. One of them is related to the additional protections. It clarifies some things. It's had a public hearing. Don't know what's happening to that next. So there's a whole slew of them. Couple of cool ones related to COVID-19 and rents not being paid, but those haven't advanced into committee at all. So we keep our eye on it. We typically wait till after the session to see what comes out before we implement it. But there are a couple of of bills. And like Justin said, they could look super different by the time they get out of both committees and become law. So we are tracking it. Do thank Kelly for pointing me to how to track those through the state's website. But yeah, nothing, at least that I've seen, nothing super dramatic coming out so far.
So something that's coming up for me is there was a family in my school where the landlord was going to evict them and they were getting ready to move and they didn't realize that they had this protection, although the SB or the SB or yeah, 608. Yeah. And until we had talked to them, and I'm just wondering how many folks know that they have these protections. You know, are we going into like the apartment complexes and letting I know we might put it in the pilot and it, you know, there's some stuff on the website, but getting folks that there's this resource out there for them as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think if council elects to make this permanent, staff would be happy to find ways to make this information really obvious. We have it on our website. We have conversations every 6 months, but I also respect that may not be enough. So staff is open to doing that and certainly would welcome any other suggestions. That's a great point.
Do we think Community Alliance of Tenants is monitoring us, or are they just looking at Portland and they're not? I mean, if a tenant from Milwaukie contacted them, would they know to notify them about our ordinance?
Oh, yeah.
I think so. There's only 2 jurisdictions, I think, that we know of, Portland and Milwaukie, that have additional protections. So we're kind of known for having it.
Yeah, and I mean, you all remember, they were pretty involved when we were first passing this, and they were pretty much responsible for bringing all those tenants to the table to try to, advocate to us. And we've had we had members on the roundtable mayor and I had between tenants and landlords. So yeah, I definitely think they're aware, and they probably are very instrumental in providing resources to tenants when letting tenants know that these extra protections are there when they get phone calls from folks who are sort of in a panic about finding housing.
But I absolutely agree with Councilor Nicodemus that we need to be really proactive. And this isn't the only thing. I mean, I've been thinking about that too with our efforts to get people's back rents paid down after this, during the pandemic thing. A lot of people who are in those kind of situations are very
precarious.
Well, they're in their shell, and they're not like they're out there looking for solutions, and they're only a certain percentage would think to turn to the city and say, hey, do you have a solution for me? They're just suffering and trying to figure out what the heck they're going to do when they're homeless. So I would like to see us be really proactive on getting this kind of information, and then whatever we can set up and use the federal funds that we're getting, same kind of, same bailiwick, same folks.
It seems like excuse me, I hear in this an opportunity for council to meet with the North Clackamas School District Board. I think that could be really fruitful to just say, hey, we're noticing, we're hearing that people aren't aware of renter protections and of resources that are available. Oftentimes, you all with students and families and the teachers and counselors in those schools are the ones who see it and hear it. What can we do to help you all get those resources to families in your school district, just as one way of improving, getting the word out.
Definitely making sure the folks at the Wichita Center know, because that's where the McKinney-Vento Homeless Liaison's office is. And that's where a lot of the, social support, the food bank and all of that are. So making sure they're aware.
And she wasn't. I spoke with her today to get the current homeless numbers. And she was not aware that we had done any buying down of people's backgrounds. So
was she aware of the 90 days under state law?
Yeah, we didn't talk about the no cause eviction part.
Oh, okay.
I was looking for numbers on homelessness, and then I brought up the $25,000 that we had spent so far, and that there was another $25,000 up there, and then hopefully there'll be more after that.
I think that's a great, I think that's a great suggestions, both the school board level and Wichita. I also think that, parents are getting lots of communications, from their schools, and anything that we might do to sort of coordinate with the district, and especially if there are some really valuable tools like this, making sure that we have, some way to get it, maybe it's a line on, every year I have to fill out a form for, for eligibility for free or reduced lunch. That might be an opportunity to put information about additional resources and rights, into the hands of parents and guardians. So as one example, I'm constantly, there's all kinds of communication points between the school district and parents. And so we might just be able to sort of leverage what's already happening. And certainly that would need, a principal's blessing or the school district's blessing, but I don't see that the existing board would have any concerns about that.
I wouldn't want to make an assumption that people are just going to come out and say that they're houseless as well. Because there are a lot of folks who are very prideful, and they're not going to say anything. So then, we're going to miss a whole bunch of people.
Yep. I think, when we get the next, so there's lots of things, right? But we should be reaching out to the various food banks in the area. We should be reaching out every place we can think of that somebody who's, on the margins is going to be at, or any way that we can engage them.
I would also point out that is very much something that I would hope that the county is taking a lead on. And that would be another place where I think council could encourage county leadership to make sure that information is flowing freely, since they are the housing authority for the area.
Yep. Okay, so do you guys have your questions answered that you needed from us? No.
I don't think so.
No. I think, I don't want to assume, but based on the discussion, hearing a lot of feedback around and great input about how to get the word out, which would be great. I think the main question we have for you is, would you like us to come back in June and make this permanent and have a permanent ordinance? And I'm seeing head nods. So, okay. Everyone? It's not my job to poll you, so I'm overstepping my boundaries right now.
I guess I would caveat that if we see something coming out of the legislature that's going to impact this one way or the other, we'll come back, quicker than June to let you know, or as soon as we find something out. I have no way of predicting whether that's the case, and it very likely won't be the case. But if we do see something that would get in our way or change our stance, we'll let you know.
I mean, I was the one who suggested making it permanent first off last fall, and I still support that, but I do find it less compelling than I thought I would once we see the comparison between state and, what our ordinance does, and that it's really about first year of tenancy. But I mean, I still think it's worth doing.
Okay.
Does that also mean that we're letting the housing emergency expire?
So I didn't catch in the notes whether or not that affected anything. Was it decided in the notes that that didn't affect anything else?
Yeah, we just need to come back with a new ordinance. So we'll let Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can either let 2118 expire in June and then adopt a new ordinance, or we repeal 2118, which is the current renter protections, which is tied to the housing emergency. So we want a fresh ordinance that is not. It is a separate standalone thing.
And it can just have an effective date of June 1, if that's when the emergency one,
Correct.
We can pick.
Yeah, so they'd be seamless.
Yeah.
I probably for the cleanest approach is to just let what's happened in the past go away and start fresh, and make sure we don't have a gap in there somewhere. Probably be the cleanest way to do it.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So staff will bring back an ordinance to adopt the renter protections kind of as they are permanently at the time we would normally have renewed it. Do you want staff to be prepared to renew the housing emergency at that time and have that discussion then? Or do you expect that we will let the emergency itself expire as well in June?
Unless there is some other benefit to it, we may as well just let it expire.
And you can always reinstate it if and when you need it. Okay.
I suppose, can I just raise a question before we move on to that? I mean, Mayor, we declared a climate emergency, and I mean, it's not that the housing crisis has gone away. In fact, we're probably not even really fully aware of what the pandemic is done. I mean, we've sort of, we've gotten a reprieve, and it's artificial, and we don't know what's coming.
Right.
So I'm a little bit less excited about letting something expire simply because one thing that we've been relying on it for, I mean, and maybe we just bring another emergency, resolution, but I mean, a resolution declaring an emergency. It signals that we still take this very seriously.
Well,
and it's one of our number one goals, and it still is.
If I'm remembering the conversation correctly, last fall when we talked about this, I was recommending that we not make it an every 6 months thing, that we have a housing state of emergency and we should just leave it, state it like our climate, just exactly like you're saying, like our climate emergency, and leave it be until that's not the case anymore. And we sort of went this other direction. So I'm good with that. For all practical purposes, I don't. Sure.
I just want to confirm that we do not want to tie it then to percentage, because one of the things that's been tripping up staff work is just coming back every time we're looking at the percentage of the housing market. So if you're comfortable, I'd like staff to remove that and have it be more of a policy statement than a connection back to a percentage. And we can send that around for you all to make comment on going into the meeting.
And not make it something that sunsets, that's something to be removed when it's no longer the case.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah. We'll look at the climate emergency and model it after that. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Angel.
Well, then you have answered all my questions. We will be back in June with a modified housing emergency, and we will also be back in June with the permanent renter protection ordinance.
June or May?
May, before it expires. I'll look at the calendar. Before it expires.
Good.
Thank you. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Great job. Okay. Council reports on events, meetings attended, anything anybody needs to bring up? Nope. So I just to keep you all in the loop, I testified this morning on the SDC bill that's floating. I think it's 3040. LOC was reaching out. They reached out to the mayors. And so that's why I ended up doing it. It's pretty interesting. They're trying to conflate the cost of housing with our SDCs. That the reason housing is unaffordable in the Portland metro region, according to the Home Builders Association, is SDCs. So, but there were a lot more testimony opposing the bill from the LOC and others than there were developers supporting it. But it's something to keep our eye on, because that would be not good if that passed. If nobody else has anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all.